The sky above Earth was calm, but in the cold space beyond the moon something vast had arrived. A fleet of ships larger than anything human eyes had ever seen glided into the solar system. Their silver hulls reflected sunlight like blades, and their engines glowed with power older and stronger than anything Earth had built. The ships belonged to the vast empire, a civilization that had conquered countless worlds before, and now their gaze had turned to Earth. For the people of Earth, the first sign was not the ships themselves but the sudden silence across satellites. Networks faltered for seconds before returning, carrying a message in a voice that was not human. The words were translated into every language at once. The message was not long, yet it carried weight heavier than steel. People of Earth. The vast empire has arrived. Your world is rich, your people strong, but you are unclaimed. Submit to the empire and you shall live under our rule. Resist, and you will be destroyed. You have 7 cycles to answer. The message repeated, echoing from every device that could receive a signal. Phones, televisions, radios, even the great screens in cities all carried the same command. Children stopped playing in the streets, parents stood frozen, and workers in towers stared at each other with disbelief. Humanity had always wondered if life existed beyond the stars. Now it was no longer a question. The answer had come with a demand. In the capital cities of every nation, leaders gathered in emergency meetings. The halls of power, normally filled with long speeches and slow decisions, buzzed with urgent voices. Some leaders argued for surrender, pointing to the size of the alien fleet. Others spoke of history, of times when humans were pressed to the ground but rose again. The debate stretched through the night, and outside the halls of government ordinary people watched the skies in fear. Myra, a young technician working at an orbital station, had been among the first to see the alien ships on her monitor. Her hands had trembled when the shapes appeared, but her mind remained sharp. She spent hours staring at the design of their hulls, the way their formations moved. She whispered to herself, "They believe we will bend. They do not know us." In a military base far from the city, General Aaron stood before a wall of screens showing the enemy fleet. His voice was calm, though his heart carried the same fear as any other human. "They expect us to bow," he said to the officers around him. "But we are children of struggle. We learned to fight storms, famine, and fire. If they want our world, they will pay a price." The words spread like a flame. Across Earth, people began to choose. Some gathered supplies, hiding in shelters. Others volunteered at bases, ready to serve in any way they could. Scientists worked through the night, dusting off projects once considered too costly or dangerous. Engineers tested new weapons, while old factories roared back to life, producing steel and fuel for what was to come. The Empire's fleet remained silent after their first broadcast. They drifted in orbit, watching, waiting, certain that Earth would break itself with fear. On their command ship, the Imperial commander observed the planet below. To him, Earth was no different from the dozens of worlds the Empire had consumed. He believed this was just another step in their endless march across the galaxy. But Earth was not like the others. The planet carried scars of wars and disasters, yet each scar told a story of survival. Where the Empire saw weakness, humans saw memory. Where the Empire expected silence, they found debate, determination, and unity. The 7 days passed quickly. On the final day, the leaders of Earth stood together before cameras that reached every corner of the globe. Their faces were tired but firm. General Aaron stepped forward, speaking on behalf of all. His words were steady, carrying across the world and into space. To the vast empire. We are not subjects. We are not resources. This is our home, and we will not kneel. If you bring war, then you will learn the strength of Earth. The message was transmitted directly to the alien fleet. For the first time since their arrival, silence did not belong to humanity. It belonged to the invaders, who had expected obedience but instead received defiance. That night, as stars shone above the darkened cities, people felt fear, but alongside it grew something stronger. Pride. Unity. The knowledge that they were facing the unknown together. Children whispered promises to be brave. Parents held their families close. Soldiers checked their weapons, and scientists whispered about hope. The empire had demanded submission. Instead, they had awakened a world that would not bow. And in the heart of every human, from the tallest towers to the smallest villages, a quiet fire began to burn. It was the fire of defiance, the fire of war waiting to be unleashed. The refusal had been spoken. The words of General Aaron had carried across every screen, every radio, and every satellite. The declaration was simple yet powerful: Earth would not kneel. For a moment, silence followed. The alien fleet gave no answer. Their ships drifted far above, patient and watchful, like hunters circling prey. On Earth, the effect was instant. People had waited in uncertainty, unsure if their leaders would choose safety through surrender or risk everything through resistance. Now the choice was clear. Fear remained, but alongside it came a new force: unity. In the great halls of the United Council, the leaders of many nations sat together. For centuries they had argued over borders, trade, and politics. Now they spoke as one body. The first voice came from Chancellor Wren, who leaned forward with a determined gaze. We cannot turn back from this path. The empire will return with fire, but we must be ready. President Ishan nodded in agreement. Our survival depends not on fear, but on preparation. If we stand divided, we will fall. If we stand united, we may yet endure. Even those who had argued for surrender earlier began to change their tone. The sight of their people rallying, the sound of volunteers filling streets and bases, gave them strength they had not expected. Earth was not collapsing into despair, it was rising. Myra, the technician who had first seen the alien ships on her screen, worked without rest at the orbital station. She and her team studied every movement of the Empire fleet, noting their formations and energy signatures. She felt small compared to the vast machines above, yet she also felt a strange pride. They may have strength, she told her fellow workers, but they do not have our will. In the military command centers, General Aaron met with commanders from across the world. Maps and digital screens filled the rooms, glowing with lines of defense and hidden projects. Our advantage, he explained, is not size or power. Our advantage is spirit. They believe war is only numbers and firepower. They do not understand our imagination. Engineers and scientists echoed his words through their actions. Old projects that had been buried in archives were brought to light again. Prototype rail cannons once considered too costly were reassembled. Laser defense grids were tested on the edges of the atmosphere. Even civilian industries were turned toward the cause. Factories that once built cars now shaped armor plates. Shipyards that once made cargo freighters now prepared frames for strike craft. The people of Earth felt the weight of the coming war. In villages, towns, and great cities, life changed quickly. Farmers planted with urgency to ensure supplies. Teachers spoke to children about courage and hope, even as sirens tested in the background. Ordinary citizens began drilling for emergencies, turning parks and stadiums into training grounds. Humanity was learning not just to resist, but to fight together. The Empire observed all of this from above. In the command chamber of the largest ship, the Imperial commander studied reports from his captains. His face remained calm, yet his words carried quiet disdain. They prepare as if they matter. Let them. When the storm falls, their efforts will crumble like dust. Yet beneath his calm surface, a shadow of doubt formed. Few worlds had answered with such defiance. Most had surrendered at once, seeking mercy. Earth was different. Their refusal was bold, and their activity below suggested determination. He dismissed the thought with a wave, but the doubt lingered like a whisper he could not silence. Back on Earth, Myra's team discovered a pattern in the alien fleet's movements. The ships were powerful, but they followed strict routines. They circled in predictable orbits, changed formations at precise times, and left gaps when they shifted. Myra presented her findings to her superiors. They are strong, she said, but they are rigid. They do not adapt quickly. That is where we strike. Her analysis reached General Aaron, who smiled faintly as he studied the data. They are used to breaking the weak, he said. They do not know what to do when the weak refuse to break. The days that followed were filled with restless work. Every hour counted. Every scientist, engineer, soldier, and citizen played a part. News channels broadcast stories of bravery, reminding people that they were not alone. A family in one nation built shelters for neighbors. A group of miners in another repurposed drilling machines into armored vehicles. Across the seas, young volunteers stood in long lines, waiting to join defense units. On the seventh day after the refusal, as the sun set across continents, people gathered to watch the sky. The alien fleet was still there, silent and vast, but Earth no longer waited in fear. They had made their choice. General Aaron stood on the balcony of the command tower, looking upward. He thought of the long history of humanity, of storms survived, wars endured, and trials overcome. He whispered, not to himself alone but to all who would hear, "We are ready." The Empire had demanded submission. Humanity had answered with refusal. The stage was set, and though none could know the cost to come, all understood one truth: if the invaders wanted Earth, they would not receive obedience. They would find resistance forged from unity. The sky above Earth glowed with an unnatural light. It was not the light of sunrise or sunset, but the shimmering reflection of the alien fleet drifting in orbit. For days the ships had waited in silence, but silence was never meant to last. On the eighth day after Earth's refusal, the vast empire made its move. Without warning, 3 of their warships broke formation and descended toward the planet. Their engines burned bright, leaving trails of silver fire across the heavens. People on the surface stopped and looked upward as shadows passed over their cities. Children clutched their parents, soldiers tightened their grips on rifles, and leaders watched the skies with tense faces. At the main command center, alarms rang. Screens lit up with red signals as officers shouted positions and numbers. General Aaron stood in the middle of the room, calm but unblinking. His voice cut through the noise. They come not to test us, but to break us quickly. Hold the lines. Show them our fire. High above the atmosphere, Earth's defenses came alive. Satellites that once served only to guide signals now carried weapons built in secret. Long rails charged with energy, glowing as magnets pulled projectiles into place. With a single command, they fired. The first clash came like thunder. Metal rods, accelerated to impossible speed, shot through space and tore into the shields of the lead alien ship. Sparks and flames burst across its surface, shaking it from its path. Humanity's rail cannons had spoken, and the Empire learned Earth would not wait quietly. On the ground, cities watched in awe as streaks of light crossed the sky. For the first time since the ultimatum, people felt not only fear but hope. The invaders were not untouchable. They could be struck. But the Empire was not unprepared. The wounded warship adjusted, its shields flaring brighter. The other two ships unleashed beams of energy that cut through the upper atmosphere. One satellite vanished in a single blast, a second cracked apart, and fragments rained down like fire over the ocean. The clash had begun, and the cost was real. Myra worked frantically at her station aboard the orbital command post. Her hands moved across controls, sending new targeting orders to the surviving satellites. She spoke quickly but clearly, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Focus fire on their flanks. Do not let them reform. Keep them guessing. Her orders reached the defense network, and once more Earth's hidden weapons responded. Smaller missiles launched from high-altitude platforms, weaving through the air and climbing into space. They struck against the glowing shields of the Empire ships, shaking them again. The aliens had expected obedience, not resistance. They had expected a broken world, not one that fought with every ounce of will. Still, the power of the Empire was immense. The three warships pressed forward, ignoring damage that would have destroyed human vessels. Their beams cut paths through the sky, burning through defense grids one after another. For every strike Earth delivered, the Empire struck back with force 3 times greater. General Aaron did not falter. He watched the screens, then turned to his officers. They are not invincible. They bleed. Every second we hold them back gives us strength. Do not fear their size. Remember our cause. Across Earth, pilots prepared for the next stage. In hidden hangars, strike craft that had once been simple cargo ships were now armed and ready. The call came, and they launched into the night sky. Engines roared, carrying them upward toward the invading fleet. Among the pilots was Yara, a young commander with steady eyes and calm breath. Her squadron flew in formation, weaving past falling debris and broken satellites. Stay together, she told her team. Aim for their weak points. Every strike matters. The first wave of human fighters reached the damaged warship. They released swarms of guided weapons that struck along its weakened hull. The alien shields faltered for a brief moment, and in that moment the humans pressed their attack. Flames erupted from the side of the vessel, forcing it to slow. Cheers rose in command centers as the impossible happened, one of the mighty ships staggered under human fire. But victory came at a cost. Alien drones emerged from the larger ships, swift and ruthless. They tore through human fighters with beams of energy, scattering formations. Yara's squadron lost 2 ships in the first exchange. Her jaw tightened, but her voice remained steady. Do not stop. Every second we fight is another second Earth stands free. On the ground, people watched the battle unfold on screens and through their own eyes as glowing trails crossed the heavens. The war had come to them, but their spirit did not break. Instead, they stood together, helping one another through fear. If the skies burned, then they would face the fire as one. After hours of relentless fighting, the alien warships began to retreat. Damaged and harried, they pulled back toward the main fleet. The first clash had not ended in victory for either side. Earth's defenses were scarred, many ships lost, but the Empire's fleet had tasted resistance it had not expected. As silence slowly returned, General Aaron looked around the command room. The officers were exhausted, yet their eyes glowed with determination. Myra sat slumped at her console, but even in her fatigue she whispered, "We did not fall." Aaron's reply was simple but strong. "No. We did not. And we will not." Above them, the alien fleet reorganized, preparing for the next strike. The battle was far from over, but the first clash had proven a truth that would echo across the stars: humanity would not be taken easily. The first clash was over, but Earth had no time to rest. The alien warships had pulled back, yet their main fleet still floated above the planet like a heavy shadow. Everyone knew the Empire would strike again, stronger than before. What the Empire did not know was that humanity had only shown a fraction of its strength. In secret bases, deep bunkers, and hidden hangars, projects long left unfinished were now brought into the light. Old plans that had once been judged too expensive or too dangerous were suddenly needed. Engineers, scientists, and workers labored together without pause. Each one understood that survival depended not only on courage but also on creativity. General Aaron walked through one of the underground factories. Sparks flew as welders sealed armor plates. The air shook with the sound of engines being tested. Rows of newly built strike craft stood ready. He placed a hand on the cold metal of one machine, whispering quietly, "You will carry the hopes of many." Then he turned to the workers. His voice was strong. "The Empire believes strength is only size and power. Show them they are wrong. Show them the strength of human hands and human minds." Meanwhile, Myra continued her work at the orbital station. She studied recordings from the battle, focusing on the alien fleet's movements. Every detail mattered: the timing of their drones, the way their shields pulsed, the rhythm of their attacks. She discovered something that made her sit up straight. Their ships were advanced, but their systems followed patterns too rigid to change quickly. "They rely on order," she told her team. "If we disrupt that order, they stumble." Her findings were sent to commanders, who began planning tactics that would take advantage of the weakness. Small, fast ships would move unpredictably, striking and vanishing before the Empire could adjust. Guerrilla tactics, once used in ancient wars on Earth, would now be used in the stars. Far from the command centers, in quiet towns and crowded cities, ordinary people also prepared. Farmers donated fuel and supplies. Builders turned their skills to repairing damaged structures. Families opened their homes to house soldiers and workers. In one mining colony, crews converted their drills into armored ground vehicles. A miner named Joran stood beside the massive machine he had reshaped. "This tool once dug stone," he said with pride. "Now it will dig through the walls of the enemy." These acts of strength were not born from wealth or technology alone, but from unity. Where the Empire saw only scattered nations, humanity had become one world. Old rivalries faded as people remembered they now faced a greater foe. Yara, the pilot who had led her squadron in the first clash, trained with new recruits. Many of them were young, some barely more than students, yet their eyes carried determination. She walked among them, speaking calmly. "You do not fight for glory. You fight so that your families may live free. Remember this, and fear will not control you." The recruits nodded, gripping their helmets tightly. They knew the risks, yet none turned away. Their willingness to stand was itself a weapon the Empire could not measure. In the orbit above, the Empire prepared for their second strike. Inside the command chamber, the Imperial commander studied reports of the first battle. His captains spoke with confidence, dismissing the damage as minor. But deep in his thoughts, unease grew. He had seen human resistance firsthand. They adapt quickly, he murmured. They should have fallen already. Why do they rise stronger with each strike? His doubt was quiet, yet real. He knew the Empire had crushed many worlds, but none had fought like this. The humans seemed fragile, yet every attempt to break them only revealed more hidden strength. On Earth, General Aaron gathered his officers. Myra joined through a secure channel, her face tired but determined. Yara stood at his side in uniform. Together they formed a circle around a glowing table where battle plans were displayed. The Empire will come again, Aaron said firmly. But this time we will not only defend. We will strike. We will use their pride against them. Myra explained the patterns she had found in the alien fleet, pointing to moments of weakness in their rotations. Yara added her own experience from the first clash, describing how alien drones reacted slowly to unpredictable maneuvers. Aaron listened, then nodded. Good. We will fight them not as they expect, but as we choose. Every soldier, every machine, every mind will matter. As preparations continued, the spirit of Earth grew stronger. Songs of hope were sung in crowded shelters. Flags of different nations were carried side by side in marches of unity. Even in the darkest hours, people whispered to one another, "We are not broken. We are not slaves. We are human." Night fell across the world, but the work never stopped. Factories roared, shipyards glowed, and training grounds echoed with the steps of recruits. Humanity was no longer waiting for rescue or mercy. They were preparing to write their own story. The Empire looked down and saw only a small world struggling against the inevitable. But hidden within that struggle was something far greater: an iron will, a stubborn refusal, and a strength that grew brighter each time it was tested. When dawn returned, and the first rays of sunlight touched the earth, General Aaron looked out across the horizon. His eyes narrowed, but his voice carried hope. They wanted submission, he said. Instead they will find our hidden strength. The days of preparation passed quickly. Factories worked without pause, shipyards launched new vessels, and every corner of Earth hummed with effort. People no longer asked if the Empire would attack again. They asked when. Everyone understood that the second clash would decide more than survival. It would decide if humanity could change the story written by the Empire across countless worlds. The alien fleet finally moved. Hundreds of warships shifted into formation, their glowing engines lighting up the sky. This time, there was no test, no warning, no small attack. The Empire came in force, determined to crush Earth before rebellion spread further. General Aaron stood inside the command tower, his eyes fixed on the glowing map of the heavens. He spoke calmly to his officers, though his chest carried the weight of every life below. This is their full strike. Hold your ground. Every second we resist is victory. At the orbital station, Myra's hands flew across her console. She had tracked the Empire's patterns for days, and now those lessons mattered. They are spreading their fleet too wide, she reported. Their pride blinds them. We can break them if we strike at the center. The plan had been prepared long before this day. Humanity could not match the Empire in numbers or size, but they could outthink them. While most defenses would hold the line, a small strike force would aim for the heart of the alien fleet. The target was the flagship, the ship from which the Imperial commander directed the battle. If that ship fell, the whole enemy formation might collapse. Commander Yara was chosen to lead the mission. She stood in the hangar beside her squadron, the pilots gathered around her. The roar of engines filled the air as their ships were prepared for launch. Yara's voice was calm but firm. The enemy believes we are weak. They believe this planet is already theirs. Today we prove them wrong. Stay sharp, stay together, and remember what we fight for. The squadron launched into the night sky, climbing higher and higher until the earth curved below them. Above, the Empire's fleet stretched like a wall of steel. The flagship loomed at the center, its surface glowing with shields and weapons. Yara's eyes narrowed. She knew the task was nearly impossible, but she also knew it was the only chance. The battle exploded in the upper atmosphere. Rail cannons fired again, missiles streaked upward, and the skies burned with beams of light. Human fighters swarmed like wasps, darting in unpredictable paths. Alien drones gave chase, but Myra's predictions guided the pilots. Left flank open, she called over the channel. Now strike. The small squadron pierced through the shifting lines of the fleet. They weaved between explosions, dodged beams, and struck at weak points in the alien ships. For every fighter lost, two more pushed forward. Their path was narrow, but it led straight to the flagship. Inside the command tower of the Empire's flagship, the Imperial commander watched with cold focus. His captains shouted warnings as human fighters approached closer than any enemy had before. He dismissed their panic. Let them try. They cannot break the will of the Empire. But he underestimated the will of Earth. Yara's squadron reached the shadow of the massive ship. Its shields blazed as alien weapons fired in every direction. Her voice stayed steady even as her ship shook from the force. Plant the charges. Do not stop now. One by one, her squadron dropped specialized explosives onto the hull. The charges clung to the ship's surface, small compared to the vast metal walls, yet powerful enough to tear open its armor. The flagship fired desperately, destroying several human fighters, but too late. The last charge was planted. Yara gave the command. Detonate. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then light burst across the flagship. The explosions ripped through its hull, tearing apart engines and weapons. Fire spread along its side, and the giant vessel staggered. Its shields flickered, then failed. Across the battlefield, alien ships hesitated. Their leader's command was gone, their formation broken. Confusion spread among them. It was the first time in memory that an Empire flagship had fallen to defiance. On Earth, cheers erupted in shelters, bases, and command rooms. General Aaron stood tall, his voice rising above the noise. They are not gods. They are not endless. They can fall, and we have proved it. Myra leaned back in her chair, exhausted but smiling. The turning point, she whispered. This is where it begins. But even in victory, the cost was heavy. Half of Yara's squadron had been lost. Ships burned in the sky, and families wept for those who did not return. Yet their sacrifice had shifted the balance. For the first time, the Empire faltered. In the ruins of the flagship, the Imperial commander was dragged from the command chamber by his guards. His face burned with disbelief and anger. He had believed Earth to be another weak world, yet its people had dared to wound the Empire itself. As the alien fleet retreated to regroup, humanity stood taller than before. They had faced the storm and endured. They had struck at the heart of their enemy and shown the galaxy that the vast empire was not invincible. The turning point had come. And though the war was far from over, the future no longer looked like chains. It looked like hope. The flagship of the vast empire had fallen. Its explosion had sent shards of metal and fire across the battlefield, shaking the remaining alien fleet. The loss of their command ship was more than a tactical defeat. It was a shock to the pride of a civilization that had never been challenged so directly. From orbit, Myra watched the retreating fleet through her monitors. Her hands were steady, though her heart raced. The patterns she had studied for weeks now worked in reality. Humanity had not only survived, they had inflicted a blow the Empire did not expect. She turned to General Aaron in the command room. They are pulling back. They are disorganized. We can push now if we act carefully. Aaron's eyes were hard and determined. We do not chase blindly. We hold our ground and strike only where we have advantage. Let them feel fear for the first time. Across the globe, news of the Empire's faltering spread quickly. Screens and radios carried images of damaged ships, fires in orbit, and the brave pilots who had struck the flagship. Ordinary people cheered in streets and homes. Soldiers stood taller. Even children, who had been frightened days before, now whispered hope to one another. Humanity had seen that the mighty could be wounded. In hidden bases on other planets already under Empire control, rumors of Earth's defiance began to spread. Workers whispered about ships falling, about fleets retreating, about humans who refused to bend. Seeds of rebellion stirred in places that had long been silent. The actions of one world were awakening others to possibility. On Earth, General Aaron called a council of the top commanders and strategists. Yara, still recovering from the last mission, joined through secure video link. Myra was present as well, her eyes scanning readings from orbit and battle sensors. We have broken their formation, Aaron said, pointing to glowing patterns on the map. Now we must think beyond defense. We must show that we can take the fight to them, without risking our people unnecessarily. Yara leaned forward. Their drones react slowly. Their weapons fire in patterns we can predict. If we strike with small, precise attacks, we can force confusion in the fleet. Even a single ship lost can create panic. Myra added, their shields are strong, but they do not adjust quickly. We can use decoys to divide their forces. Their pride will blind them into making mistakes. Aaron nodded. Then we prepare. We fight not only with strength, but with intelligence. They have underestimated humanity from the start. They will not make that mistake twice. Meanwhile, on the alien fleet, the Imperial commander was forced to acknowledge the unexpected. His captains brought reports of broken formations, damaged ships, and loss of control. Their discipline was strained. For the first time, he realized that Earth was not just another weak planet. It was a challenge that required attention beyond routine strategy. He issued new orders, stricter and harsher, but doubt had already taken root. Soldiers who had never known defeat began questioning commands. The fear of failure spread slowly, unnoticed at first, but growing with every damaged vessel. Back on Earth, people worked tirelessly. Factories repaired what had been broken. Engineers upgraded weapons. Pilots trained for the new missions. And everywhere, citizens volunteered to support the effort. Fuel, food, intelligence, every contribution mattered. Humanity had learned that their true strength was unity. In orbit, Myra coordinated new attacks with precision. Small squadrons launched in waves, striking at weak points and returning to safety. They avoided direct confrontation when possible, using intelligence and timing instead. The Empire, powerful as it was, struggled to respond. Every loss forced them to change formations, every mistake weakened their control. On the surface, General Aaron addressed the world through secure channels. His voice carried calm authority and hope. The Empire believes it is unstoppable. They have conquered many worlds. but they do not understand what it means to fight for home. Every person on Earth has made this possible. We are no longer simply defending. We are showing that courage, unity, and determination can challenge even the greatest power in the stars. Even as the Empire faltered, the cost of defiance was visible. Ships burned, pilots were lost, and cities prepared for attacks that might come again. Yet the people of Earth felt no despair. Their world had faced impossible odds and survived. They had proved that even the mighty could be challenged. The Imperial commander, watching from his remaining ships, clenched his hands. The human world had not only resisted, it had struck back with cunning and courage. His pride was shaken. His fleet, once a symbol of invincibility, now showed cracks in discipline and morale. The empire was still strong, but the illusion of effortless conquest had ended. Above the planet, the stars were quiet again, but the sky had changed. Humanity had faced the storm and endured. They had learned that even the greatest enemy could falter in the face of unity and resolve. General Aaron stood on the balcony of the command tower, looking toward the stars. His voice was soft but firm. They thought Earth would bend. They thought we would break. They were wrong. And if they come again, they will find a world ready, and a people unyielding. On Earth, citizens slept a little easier that night. Soldiers prepared quietly, engineers worked late, and pilots rested for the battles to come. The Empire had faltered. Humanity had risen. And across the world, a quiet pride settled in every heart, the knowledge that defiance could change the course of history. The skies above Earth were quiet once more. The alien fleet had retreated beyond the edge of the solar system, damaged and hesitant. The world held its breath, waiting for a new attack that might never come. For the first time in generations, humanity felt the weight of victory and the hope of freedom at the same time. On the surface, people moved carefully among the ruins of cities and battlefields. Satellites and orbital stations sent information about the damage in orbit. Factories and shipyards were already repairing and rebuilding. Every hand contributed, from soldiers and engineers to farmers and volunteers. The work was long and difficult, but the spirit of the people was stronger than ever. General Aaron walked through one of the command centers, observing young recruits and seasoned pilots alike. He saw exhaustion in their eyes, but also pride. Each person knew they had faced an enemy unlike any before. Each person had helped to change the fate of their world. "We did not kneel," he said quietly. "We did not surrender. And because of that, Earth is alive today." In orbit, Myra examined the remains of the alien ships. Even though many vessels had been destroyed, some had escaped. She sent her report to the command room. "They are retreating, but they will remember what we did," she said. "Our fight has shown the galaxy that humans will not submit easily." Yara returned from the final mission, her squadron smaller than before, but her eyes shining with determination. "We fought for home," she said to her fellow pilots. "We fought for everyone who could not be here. We showed them what it means to resist. That will be remembered." Indeed, the galaxy had already begun to take notice. Other worlds under the Empire's control whispered about Earth. Stories of the humans' courage spread quickly. For the first time, enslaved or conquered planets dared to dream of rebellion. Humanity's defiance became a symbol of hope, proof that even the mightiest force could be challenged by unity and courage. Back on Earth, celebrations were quiet but meaningful. People helped rebuild, shared meals with neighbors, and honored those who had been lost in the conflict. Monuments were erected to remember the pilots, soldiers, and civilians who had given their strength and courage. Humanity had not only survived, it had grown stronger, more determined, and more connected than ever before. In the command tower, General Aaron gathered his officers one last time. "We have learned a lesson," he said. "Strength is not only weapons and numbers. Strength is determination, creativity, and unity. We fought as one world, and that is why we survived. That is why we will thrive." Myra joined him, still analyzing the data from orbit. "We also learned that knowledge and preparation matter as much as courage. The Empire expected fear, and they found strategy. They expected obedience, and they found resilience. They expected defeat, and they found victory." Yara added, "And we learned to believe in each other. In the stars, no one fights alone. On Earth, we fought together, and that is our greatest strength." The Imperial commander, far from Earth, was forced to report to his superiors. His voice was cold, but inside, he knew the truth. The humans had changed the balance of power. They had shown that even worlds ruled by the Empire could resist, adapt, and survive. His pride was wounded, his fleet scattered, and the illusion of invincibility shattered. Yet on Earth, no one celebrated vengeance. They celebrated survival, courage, and the knowledge that their actions had changed the future. Citizens walked together under the clear night sky, looking up at the stars that had once seemed so distant and dangerous. Now those stars carried new meaning. They were no longer symbols of fear, they were a reminder of what humans could achieve when united. In homes, children asked questions about the battles they had never seen. Parents told stories of pilots, engineers, and volunteers who had faced impossible odds. One day, parents said, "You may walk among the stars. And you will know that our people never surrendered, no matter how strong the enemy seemed." Across the rebuilt cities, humanity returned to daily life but carried a new pride in their hearts. They had faced the greatest threat their world had ever known. They had fought not for conquest, but for freedom, home, and the future. And in doing so, they had written a story that would echo through generations, a story of courage, unity, and defiance. General Aaron stood on the balcony of the command tower one last time, looking at the horizon. Myra and Yara joined him. Together they watched the sun rise, casting light on a world that had survived impossible odds. "They demanded submission," Aaron said softly. "But we gave them something stronger. We gave them war they could not win. We gave them proof that humanity will never bow." Myra smiled, feeling the weight of all they had accomplished. "And that proof will not fade," she said. "It will live in every person who remembers today, and every child who looks at the stars and dreams." Yara's gaze swept across the horizon. "We are not just survivors," she said. "We are the legacy of defiance. And the galaxy will remember our name." Above the rebuilt cities and the quiet oceans, the stars shone brightly. Humanity had endured the storm, had struck at the mighty, and had emerged stronger than ever. The Empire had faltered, other worlds had seen the power of courage, and Earth stood as a symbol of hope for the galaxy. The fire of defiance that had begun with the refusal to kneel now burned in every human heart. It was a fire that no enemy could extinguish. And in that fire, the future waited, ready for humanity to claim its place among the stars.